Tonight on the Astronomy Show, we have an interview with cultural astronomer David Bowe. John Tanner tells about his eyewitness account of the recent solar eclipse. Lee and Eric go Christmas shopping for telescopes. David Dodge has this month's edition of Astro News on the Astronomy Show.
Good evening. My name is Barry Shanko, and welcome to the Christmas December edition of the Astronomy Show. Behind me, you see the Astronomy Show staff doing the traditional decoration of the Christmas telescope. We've got a couple of features tonight on Christmas and astronomy. We also have David Dodge, who will do his usual Astro News. He'll be talking with local amateur astronomer John Tanner about the solar eclipse in South America last month. We'll be having staff member Dave Saveleaf talk with Dr. David Vogt of Science World about Northwest Indian Christmas astronomy. And we'll be having Lee Johnson and Eric Dunn talk about the buying of telescopes. So take it away, Eric and Lee.
It's the time of year you may be shopping for gifts for an astronomical friend, maybe for yourself. Where do you go to buy? Well, you can use the mail order pages of the astronomical magazines, or there may be some telescopes in your neighborhood. There are a couple in ours. We thought we'd check them out, so we decided to go on
Road trip.
The trick with the Vancouver Telescope Center is finding it. It's supposed to be on West Broadway, according to the number.
Yes, well, here we are at the 2200 block on West Broadway. I don't see any telescope store around here, do you?
Sort of conspicuous by its absence, it seems to me.
Hey, Eric, Lee, we're over here.
Oh, what's that man down there?
That's the telescope. Okay, let's go.
Right. Here, you take it.
Hi, welcome.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Hello, John.
Hello.
Nice to see you. How are things at the store?
Oh, not too bad, thank you. Speeding up now for Christmas.
You're well stocked.
Yes, I hope so.
Well, perhaps you could give us a little bit of help. We're interested in purchasing telescopes, binoculars, whatever for the season. And we're very much interested in what's available here and what would be the best kind of thing for viewing objects in the night sky. Let's say roughly at $100 or $1,000 or sky's the limit. What are some of the things you might recommend to us?
Well, I suppose in the $100 range, I would recommend binoculars rather than a telescope. I don't think you'll be able to get a telescope suitable for reasonable viewing for $100. So I suggest a good pair of 7x50 or 10x50 binoculars.
Now, the 7x50 and 10x50 binoculars, the 50 refers to the size of the objective lens that gathers the light. 50 millimeters is about 2 inches in diameter. And what we want, I think, is to gather as much light as we can when we're out looking at things in the night sky. So we don't want little opera glasses, which have tiny little lenses on them. They're not gathering enough light. So we want to get as much light in as we can, and these 2-inch objectives just might do the trick. Now, let me go and get a sky map and a book that might help me if I'm going to go out and view the night sky with binoculars.
Yes, well, this is the Night Watch by Terence Dickinson, which is an excellent book for anybody starting off, because it gives, apart from star maps, which we're talking about at the moment, it does give information on how to choose binoculars, how to choose telescopes, and some introductory astronomical information. So it's a good book, a good all-round book for anybody starting off.
Why are these star maps particularly suitable for binocular viewing, would you say?
Well, on these, if you look closer, it will tell you what you need to use to see certain objects. It'll tell you whether they're a good binocular object, whether you need to have a telescope, whether you can see them with the naked eye.
What do you have in the way of more advanced star maps?
Well, the next step up would probably be the Sky Atlas 2000, which is a much more detailed map, series of maps actually, 26 covering both hemispheres, and it goes to magnitude 8, so it'll keep you busy for quite a while.
What do you think, John, Eric, what possibilities do we have for, say, roughly $1,000 for a good usable telescope?
And this is a 3-inch refractor, and it is actually made in Richmond by Sky Instruments, a local firm that have been producing them now for something like 15 years. And we sell them, of course, obviously here, and we've sold many, many of them over the years. Refractors are probably much better for the city use because they are less affected by the city lights. A good refractor gives you probably the best image quality, although that's debated by other people. Depends on your personal point of view, I suppose. So for planetary and lunar viewing and in the city, it's probably a good buy. And of course you can certainly see some of the brighter nebula, galaxies, clusters and things as well with it.
We have with us this evening John Tanner to explain his and tell us all about his trips and travesties and so on about the eclipse of the sun. John, first off, did you see the eclipse?
We were successful, although I must say it was touch and go, like many eclipses we've been to before. The day before and the day after, not a cloud in the sky, but eclipse day, a lot of threatening clouds.
Were there many people down there to see the eclipse?
Oh man, there was people everywhere. We were situated in northern Chile, rented a car in Arica, a little coastal town, and drove up to a little place called Putre, about 125, 150 kilometers inland. So we rented our car, drove straight to the eclipse site, which was over 4,000 meters, and immediately got altitude sickness, which we've been warned about. But when you're over 4,000 meters, boy, I tell you, it really hits you. And you can't really describe what it's like. It's just, it numbs your whole body, and it constricts the blood vessels, so you got this sort of very dull headache.
And you really have to focus on your job.
Oh, man, yeah, I tell you. Well, that first night, we tried to camp out at the site that we picked for the eclipse, and about 2:30 in the morning, and I was hoping to get out because the sky was crystal clear, Magellanic clouds were up there, just, oh, it was just gorgeous sky. But I was just too sick, was just very sick. Pulled the tent up and just headed back down and drove back down to sea level. But the next day we got more acclimatized. And fortunately we ran into a nice little way stop along the way. This is halfway between Arica and Putre. It was just over 3,000 meters. And the people at this little, it was like an old railway car that had been converted to a restaurant.
That's my experience when you go to an eclipse. It's not only seeing the eclipse, but it's going to a strange country.
Right.
And meeting wonderful people from other strange countries.
That's right.
All there for one reason, to see the eclipse.
Yeah, it just brings a whole community of people together, and the British people have actually invited us to come and visit them in Cornwall, England, for the next eclipse in 1999, which
What date is that, by the
we're
way?
already planning for. August 11th, and apparently England is notoriously very wet and rainy at that time of year, but we'll take our chances. And we got to our spot, and this is the weirdest thing. I've never been to an eclipse before where nobody knew the exact time of the eclipse. Like all of the manuals from England, America, Canada, all said middle of the eclipse, 8/1950. And we thought, well, is that first contact, second contact? And I figured, well, it's probably the middle of the eclipse. But as it turns out, that was first contact instead of middle of the eclipse.
So the eclipse wasn't at 8:19, the eclipse was an hour or so later.
It was an hour and later, about 9:19. And so we were all racing to get up there and figured, oh, the cloud's going into, or the sun's going into these clouds, we're going to miss it. So let's head back down. We started down, and then we realized, what, first contact hasn't even started yet. So there must be something wrong here with the timing. So we went back, set up where we'd originally planned, and at 8/19/50, first contact, so we had another whole hour to kill to set up. Well, the altitude sickness set in again, so I had a few problems there, mechanical problems. My tape recorder, I didn't turn the volume up and set it up right, so the sound got kind of messed up there. My camera, I was supposed to set it for 200 AISA, and I only had it at 100. Well, I told them about that, so when the pictures turned out, it wasn't too bad. I had maybe about half a dozen that turned out not too badly, but oh man, it was just touch and go because the whole sky was full of these cirrus clouds that were sort of all across the sky, and the sun was right in one just before totality, and it just miraculously, when the diamond ring flashed, and the cloud just seemed to dissipate around it, and there wasn't any clouds at all.
Did you hear anybody else besides yourself screaming?
Well, you know, we picked a spot where there weren't very many people. The fellows that were with us were shouting, but we could see a couple of people way off in the distance, and that was it. We weren't around a lot of people.
Did the sky get really dark?
No. Well, okay, you remember the first eclipse you and I saw in '72 in Northwest Territories. That's got to be the darkest sky I think I've ever seen, but it wasn't even that dark, and we didn't get horizon glow. I was hoping to get, you know, nice horizon colors. That didn't really happen. I don't know why, but it just, maybe there was too many clouds above and in the sky, I'm not sure, but the corona was beautiful. Oh, there were two beautiful, delicate structures coming off the top and one off the bottom. It was just, I couldn't get over it. Venus was right nearby the sun. It just flashed out just before totality. It just lit up. So Venus was right there because it was the day after inferior conjunction.
Right.
I think I might have seen either Mercury or Jupiter through the clouds, but I'm not sure. They say there were so many clouds we had trouble picking out any other planets or stars. And that 2 minutes and 40 seconds that we had roughly goes by so fast.
About 10 seconds.
Trying to take pictures, trying to look through the binoculars, saw some prominences, or the chronosphere. I wouldn't actually see any real prominence action, but I could see where there probably was some. I didn't have enough higher power to do that. So looking forward to what some of the professionals did, but oh man, what a rush. My 14-year-old son was there. That was his first eclipse, so he was
It won't be
pretty
his last,
knocked out.
I'm sure.
No. So all in all, it turned out well. Plus we got to get into Peru and visit Cuzco and go to Ollantaytambo and Machu Picchu, of
Everybody
course.
goes to Machu Picchu. You can't go to South America without going to Machu Picchu.
Take your raincoat if you're going to Machu Picchu, though. I'll tell you, man, was it raining.
Well, thanks, John, for your report. And you're going to come back and talk about other eclipses you're going to go see, aren't you?
Well, I guess after the one in '99, sure, we'll come back.
If the Astronomy Show keeps going that long. For
Hopefully.
the Astronomy Show, I'm David Dodge, and you're John Tanner.
That's right. Clear skies.
Good day. Welcome to the December Astronomy Show. My name is David Sabely, and I'm here today at the Museum of Anthropology, where we have as our guest Dr. David Vogt, who is the Director of Science of Science World. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you, first of all, what is cultural astronomy?
Well, people have been looking at the stars since the beginning of time. It's only recently that other people have been looking at the way other people have been looking at the stars. In other words, cultural astronomy is trying to understand how different cultures around the world look at the stars and interpret them in their own areas.
It seems that there's been more studies of the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Aztecs, and Mayans. So is it only recently then that we've started studying the North American Native Indians?
The study of astronomy, I guess, that we have today, Western astronomy, which has all the astrophysics and the Big Bang and so on, comes from, I guess, history. That is, a long recorded time through the first recorded words, the contributions of Arabs, Egyptians, Romans, Greeks, and up to the modern day. So we have a lot of study on that, and there is a history of astronomy approach. Cultural astronomy gets into things such as mythologies, which are generally oral mythologies rather than written down, and artifacts such as buildings, cities. Stonehenge is a good example of the archaeoastronomy area. So yes, it's easy to work with history, that is the written word and how people have done, but it's much harder and more difficult, and that's where cultural astronomy fits in, to work with stories. Which aren't necessarily written down initially, and with buildings and other kinds of monuments.
You've mentioned, though, that oral history you felt was actually better than, say, literal history. Could you elaborate on that and why you said that?
Oh, that's a good point. I said burn your books in a way. And it was a challenge to say that when you look at things like star lore, which means the constellation stories, you find that things such as Ursa Major, the Big Bear, is a story that's shared all around the Northern Hemisphere in almost exactly the same context. What that means, and it's only one of the constellations, what that means is that it's probably a very, very old story. And an oral culture has been able to maintain it because they haven't written it down. They have shared it, one person to one person, and the meaning of that story is translated through the oral communication, much better than it can be on text. And so a good example for us is the Bible, which people are trying to reinterpret now on the basis of the literal text because the original meanings of all the stories have been largely lost by the cultures. And so we've got the fundamental people looking at the Bible, trying to interpret what it means, and literal and all kinds of cultural context, it's lost. Whereas in oral cultures, people manage to keep an essential meaning of a story constant but evolving, true for a much longer time.
David, what is the significance of the Christmas tree to the world pole?
Across world cultures, there's the ziggurat, the obelisk, the maypole, and the Christmas tree, which all fit into that same kind of tradition of symbols going up to the sky. In fact, there's a wonderful tale on the northwest coast amongst the Haida where they talk about a huge invisible tree, and it's invisible because it's dark and so you can't see it, that goes up to the sky, and all the branches are kind of spread out across the sky. Again, you can't see them, but at night, all of the birds, which you see by day, fly up into this tree and take off their feathers, so all you can see is their souls as they roost on this tree. And what they're talking about, of course, is the stars, which are roosting in this tree. And so if you imagine yourself underneath looking up, you're seeing this whole flock of birds amongst the stars that are gradually turning as this world pole tree turns, and you see it. And I guess you can recreate that same kind of idea if this Christmas you crawl under your Christmas tree, turn on the lights and turn all the other lights off in the house, and just look up. If all the other lights are off, all you'll see is the lights on the tree, and they'll look like the stars in the heavens in a way. And that's where our whole Christmas tree symbol comes from. And the star at the top of the tree is very similar to the North Pole star that's there as well. So it's very deep, old story, and it's wonderful to make those kind of connections to it. But it all comes from the same basic idea of how the heavens work.
In Vancouver, and this is Jeanette.
Hello, hi.
You run the place here?
Hello, Jeanette.
Oh, I more than run the place, I actually own it.
Excellent. And we were wondering if you could give us some information and advice about this type of telescope right here. It's called a Schmidt-Cassegrain, a Celestron C8, and so on.
Nice piece of equipment, very nice.
All right. Now, if I wanted to do astronomy, why would I want to consider a telescope of this sort?
Well, this kind of telescope, it's easily transported. It's not too long to, it's not too big. You've got a nice 8-inch lens. You're going to get a lot of magnification out of it. It's all motorized, tracking system in it. You can computerize it if you want. It can all be added on afterwards. It can actually come computerized. So you can get it both ways. And, it's most astronomers wind up with an 8-inch because of portability.
Mm-hmm, I see.
And it gives them, it's great for photography. It gives them everything they need in a telescope. The power magnification is up to about 500. And you can't really do much more than that anyways. And if you're doing it from the city, any kind of astronomy, don't go too large a lens, because you're gonna defeat the purpose of doing astronomy, because it's just, our pollution in the city is great for astronomy.
All right. Well, now, Jeanette, what would you recommend for a good telescope, say roughly in the $500 to $1,000 range?
This is a 4.5-inch reflector from Celestron. It's a great little scope to start with. It's $899. It's got a very nice heavy-duty mount, nice equatorial. It doesn't wobble when you take it out. Like a lot of these you see on the market with these skinny little equatorial mounts, and they just, in the first wind, your telescope's gone. This is a nice piece of equipment. It does need a little maintenance. All reflectors do. They require maintenance, the cleaning the mirrors and things, and some people, it'll deter them a little, but it's not that hard to do every 6 months or so. And you need to learn how to culminate. It's another one of those things that...
You mean to align the optics?
To align, well, the mirror in the front, if you look in the top of this, you actually have a couple of mirrors in here, so let's get this unlocked if we can. Oops, I'll turn this over for you here. If you look down in here, all reflectors have a mirror at the bottom mirror at the top, so your light goes down this tube, is collected in the bottom mirror, which is parabolic. In essence, it's shaped like a soup bowl, but you can't see it. So the light comes back again to a very fine point for viewing. Light has to be brought down to a point, and then you do your viewing down here in the objective eyepiece. And that's it. But because it's hollow and because there's nothing covering this, you're going to get dust down there, dirt, and it does require some maintenance. But it's a nice beginner scope.
It's an impressive mounting on it.
It's a very nice mount. Celestron has gone to a lot of trouble of building a really good mount on a 4.5 inch, which a lot of companies don't do.
Could you put a larger telescope, a tube on this mount?
You probably could go up to about a 6-inch tube assembly if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you look at the 6-inch mount, it's about twice the size of this. The one that they have that used to have for their 6 inches is like, it's massive.
Now, in your experience, what kind of customer satisfaction do you find with the telescopes you sell? I mean, if you sell a telescope like this, are you likely to have it come back, or is it likely to be a successful, satisfactory telescope?
We very rarely have them coming back, but if the customer wants, if they use it for a year or so, upgrade yourself, keep it in good shape. We'll gladly help you out to buy your second scope if you want to upgrade yourself. Now here's a scope that a lot of people go for. Very little maintenance on this. You clean your lens in the front, no dust gets down this because it's all closed off. The light comes through the front lens here, comes straight down like this for viewing. Your focusing mechanism is here, very easy to use. It can also be used for land viewing. It makes a very good spotting scope.
The trade-off is that you are not gathering as much light for the money with the refractor as you are with the reflector. And for viewing nighttime objects and the deep sky objects, star clusters, galaxies, and so on, you want to gather as much light as possible. And that would mean trying to get a larger aperture reflector and learning how to take care of the optics and so on. It's not quite as foolproof as a refractor, but then there are the benefits of the greater light gathering for the amount of money that you're spending.
We're looking at a fantastic and absolutely magnificent carving of a raven behind you. And the raven, obviously very, very important in the Haida culture and so on. Tell me a bit about the raven.
Okay, well, Raven is perhaps the most important mythic figure for all of the Northwest Coast. In fact, from down in Washington State through BC, coast and central BC, into Yukon, Alaska, Northwest Territories, and even into Siberia. They tell the Raven cycle of tales. In Siberia, it's called Big Raven. And so there's a very deep, old set of tales associated with Raven. The very first of his tales, the cycle of tales, is Raven Steals the Daylight, and it talks about Raven going off and bringing back light for the people. Now, when you look in detail at the structure of that story and what's happening, and when it's told, which is at the winter ceremonials, which is around the winter solstice, the center of winter, it's a celebration of light, bringing light back, which is necessary for people because you can't survive in a cold, dark world and get resources and live. But it tells the story of what's going on in the sky at the same time. And the primary figures in the Raven tale are, in this Haida version of it in any case, are Raven and the chief of the sky and the chief of the sky's daughter. And the other people who are climbing out of the clamshell behind me, the old people, are the stars. And this clam that we're seeing opening up is the clam of day and night, which is letting the stars out into the sky. Now, the chief of the sky is the sun, the chief of the sky's daughter is the moon, and Raven is the next brightest thing in the sky after that, and that's Venus, which we know is the morning star and the evening star that can translate around the sun and the moon very nicely. What they're telling about in this tale is the winter solstice and what's happening in the sky with respect to the sun going up and down and the amount of light available to us at the winter time. If you look at the Christian myth about Christmas, it's got the same kind of celestial family involved. But more than that, it was something that people could listen to the tale, and with all the pageantry of costume and dance and song and so on, and then go out at night and actually see it happening around them. That's one of the problems we have with Christmas today, is that it's become so commercialized and so abstract for most people. How do they make reference to it? How do they have a confirmation of their own beliefs? Well, part of the confirmation for the people on the Northwest Coast was that they could go outside and actually see the main characters in their tale enacting it.
David, I get the impression that we've just scratched the surface of the study of cultural astronomy in the field of the North American Native Indian and their folklore. I want to thank you on behalf of the Astronomy Show for coming down to the museum and giving a fascinating discussion on this particular subject. Perhaps sometime in the future we could do it again.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Astro News. Well, there's not a heck of a lot happening in the sky this month. The phases of the moon this month are December 2nd, new moon, December 9th, first quarter moon, December 17th, full moon, and on Christmas is last quarter. Now, as I've said before, the moon passes by all the planets, and on the 9th, the moon passes by the planet Saturn. On the 23rd, it passes by the planet Mars, and on the 30th, it passes by close to the planet Venus. Now, we've been getting a lot of phone calls about the planet Venus from people who rise early in the morning heading off to work when the sky is still quite dark. Venus is that extremely bright planet low in the southeast. Should also be on the lookout for the planet Jupiter. About the same part of the sky as Venus, but not quite as bright. On the evening of the 14th of December, the Earth passes through another amalgamation of dust and gravel, yielding the Geminid meteor shower. Well, as I said, there isn't a lot to look at in the sky this month, but maybe we'll have better luck next month when we come back and talk about the month of January. Also next month, we'll be previewing 1995. So until then, thanks for watching Astro News on the Astronomy Show.
Well, that's our show for Christmas and for 1994. We wish all of you, from all of us, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and Happy Astronomy, everybody. So we will now turn on the Christmas telescope. Yay!
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Cosmic New Year. Batu Narada Brick Day.
The preceding program was produced through the facilities of Rogers Community 4, Vancouver. We want to hear from you and invite you to leave your comments and suggestions on our 24-hour response line message machine. Please call 731-5812.